You know something? In my 42 years on this bench, I thought I'd seen it all. Liars, thieves, broken families, and second chances. But that cold Wednesday morning changed everything I knew about justice. It was supposed to be an ordinary day, but fate had other plans. Because that morning, I met a man who truly believed the law didn't apply to him. But then something happened that no one expected. What started as a routine court session turned into the most shocking moment of my entire career. A police chief, yes, a man sworn to protect the law, stood in my courtroom and said, "Laws don't apply to people like me." That sentence silenced the entire room and changed everything. It was 8:15 a.m. The courthouse still smelled of old paper and strong Italian coffee. My clerk, Christina, placed a file on my desk. "Judge, you need to see this one." I took a sip of coffee, opened the folder, and froze. Chief Daniel Crawford. Reckless driving. Resisting arrest. Assault on a state trooper. A police chief on trial? That doesn't happen every day. You could feel in the air something big was coming. This wasn't a case about speeding. It was about power, ego, and accountability. Christina whispered, "Judge, the prosecutor requested you specifically. They said they need someone who won't be intimidated." I nodded slowly. A police chief assaulting a fellow officer. That's not just a crime. That's betrayal. I looked at the clock. 8:20. Reporters were already filling the gallery. The courtroom buzzed like a storm was about to hit. And then, the man himself walked in. Chief Daniel Crawford entered wearing his polished uniform, shining badges, and that arrogant smile you never forget. He looked less like a man coming to face justice, and more like someone arriving at a red carpet event. Behind him, 20 supporters in suits, whispering, smirking, confident. He didn't nod, didn't greet anyone. He just sat down, not like a man accused, but like someone who owned the room. For a moment, I thought of my father, a construction worker, a man who believed respect is earned, not demanded. He used to say, "Frank, the badge doesn't make the man makes the badge." That morning, I learned how right he was. Before Chief Crawford's case was called, another name appeared on my docket, Jennifer Martinez. A single mother, barely 30, trembling as she stepped up to the bench. She had been caught driving on a suspended license. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Your Honor, I know it was wrong, but I had to pick up my kids. If I'm late, they charge me $1.50, and I don't have $50. I looked at her records, 2 jobs, minimum wage, unpaid hospital bills, rent overdue. This woman wasn't a criminal. She was just surviving. I dismissed her case immediately. "You're working hard, taking care of your kids. Go pick them up." Her tears fell as she whispered, "Thank you, Your Honor." And in that moment, I noticed Chief Crawford watching her. He laughed. That laugh changed everything. It wasn't just a chuckle. It was pure contempt, a man mocking someone for a struggle. That's when I realized this case wasn't about a speeding ticket. It was about a man who had forgotten what the badge truly means. Minutes later, the bailiff called out, "Case number 247821, State versus Chief Daniel Crawford." The room went silent. Every camera pointed toward him. Crawford stood up slowly, straightened his uniform, adjusted his tie, like he was preparing for a photo, not a trial. He turned to his supporters and smirked. That smirk said it all. I'm untouchable. But in my courtroom, no one is untouchable. As he approached, his lawyer, a fancy Boston attorney, began with a rehearsed statement. "Your Honor, this is simply a misunderstanding. My client." I cut him off. "Save it. Let's hear from the chief himself." Crawford finally spoke, his tone calm but dripping with arrogance. "Your Honor, I've served 25 years in law enforcement. I think I deserve professional courtesy." I leaned forward. "Professional courtesy? You mean leniency because of your badge?" He smiled. "Exactly. That was the moment I knew. This case would make history." Every word he spoke made the courtroom colder. You could feel his confidence, not from innocence, but from connections. He believed his power protected him. But what he didn't know is that the moment he laughed at Jennifer Martinez, the story of who he really was had already begun to unfold. And as the crowd whispered and cameras rolled, one question echoed louder than ever. What happens when a man enforcing the law thinks he's above it? The answer would shake this courtroom to its core. That day, I wasn't just judging a man. I was about to judge an entire system. A system that sometimes forgets that justice doesn't wear a badge, it wears a conscience. As I looked down from the bench, one thought crossed my mind. My father would never believe what's about to happen next. Because what came next, no one in this courtroom saw coming. The microphones flickered on. The cameras zoomed closer. The tension, you could slice it with a knife. And as Chief Crawford opened his mouth, he said the 5 words that would destroy his career. Laws don't apply to me. And in that moment, silence turned into justice waiting to strike. The moment those words left his mouth, laws don't apply to me, the air in the courtroom changed. You could feel it, a chill that ran through every single person sitting there. For 42 years, I'd heard every excuse, every lie, but never something this bold. Everyone knew they were witnessing something historic. Even the reporters stopped writing for a second. The troopers in the back straightened up, jaws tight. The crowd, silent, frozen, because they all knew this wasn't just arrogance. This was a man challenging the law itself. Chief Daniel Crawford stood tall, his chin lifted, confidence oozing from every movement. He looked straight at me, like a king addressing a servant. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about one officer's misconduct. It was about how far corruption could go when no one stopped it. But what he didn't know, justice was already watching. The prosecutor, a young woman named Elena Parks, rose from her seat. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned. "Your Honor," she said, "the state will show that Chief Crawford didn't just break the law. He mocked it. We have video evidence, witness statements, and proof of ongoing abuse of power." Crawford smirked. "You call that proof?" "I call it politics." His lawyer whispered something, but he brushed him off. That arrogance, that I own the system attitude, was written all over him. He didn't realize the system he thought he owned was about to turn on him. I leaned forward. "Chief Crawford, you're accused of driving 95 miles an hour in a 45 zone, resisting arrest, and assaulting a state trooper. How do you plead?" He straightened his cuffs, glanced at the cameras, and said, "Not guilty, Your Honor. To all charges." Not a flicker of remorse. "Do you understand the seriousness of these charges?" I asked. He smiled. "With all due respect, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We've been in law enforcement as long as I have. You know, sometimes things look different from the outside. But sometimes the outside view is the truth." And he was about to see it. He leaned closer. "And frankly, Judge, after 25 years of service, I believe I've earned a little professional courtesy." "Professional courtesy?" I repeated slowly. That word, courtesy, echoed like poison in the air. It wasn't respect he wanted. It was immunity. And that, in my courtroom, was a line no one crossed. "Chief," I said, "in this courtroom, your badge does not protect you. Here, the law protects everyone, or it protects no one." The audience erupted in whispers, because no one had ever spoken to him like that before. His supporters shifted uncomfortably. Crawford's smirk flickered for the first time. He glanced over his shoulder, and I saw something new in his eyes. Not fear, but anger. The kind that comes from someone who's always gotten his way. "Your Honor," he said slowly, "I've served this state my entire life. You should be thanking me, not lecturing me." "Respect," I replied, "isn't something you get for wearing a uniform. It's something you earn by honoring it." And right there, the real battle began, pride versus principle. Elena, the prosecutor, began calling her first witness, Trooper Michael Stevens. He was young, but his posture was firm, the kind of man who believed in the badge for the right reasons. He described what happened that night. Chief Crawford was driving over 90. When we pulled him over, he refused to hand over his license. He told us, and I quote, "Do you know who I am?" The courtroom gasped. And then Trooper Stevens said, "When I tried to issue the citation, he shoved me." The crowd froze. A police chief attacking one of his own. Crawford laughed. Actually laughed, mid-testimony. "Come on," he said loudly. "You call that assault? You bumped into me. You were nervous." Elena stepped forward. Your Honor, the dashcam footage will show otherwise. Crawford turned to her, his voice dripping with condescension. You've never been in the field, have you? You don't understand pressure. She didn't flinch. No, Chief. I just understand accountability. That line hit like a gavel. Accountability, the one word he hated. I called for the footage. The screen flickered on, and there it was, the moment of truth. The video showed Crawford's car weaving across lanes, lights flashing behind him. He steps out, waving his badge like a shield. When Trooper Stevens tries to reason with him, Crawford grabs his arm and shoves him hard. You could hear his voice on the tape. Get your hands off me. I run this state. The room went completely silent. Even his lawyer's face went pale. The mask was slipping, and the world was watching. I looked at him. Chief Crawford, I said, do you deny this is you? He leaned back, calm as ever. I don't deny that's me. I just deny that it's wrong. And then he said something that made every moral bone in my body tighten. You people don't get it. The law needs people like me to bend it. Otherwise it breaks. That was it. The confession behind the arrogance. His words were poison, but they revealed the truth. He wasn't just defending himself. He was defending a belief that power excused wrongdoing. The prosecutor's voice trembled but stayed strong. Your Honor, this man believes the law is his weapon, not his duty. That belief is why he's here today. I nodded slowly, because this wasn't about a case anymore. It was about what kind of justice this courtroom truly stood for. But the deeper I looked, the darker the truth became. Behind those confident eyes, there was something more. A network, a pattern, rumors of favors, missing evidence, officers silenced, and threats whispered in corridors. This man wasn't just corrupt. He was the root of corruption. And I realized if I didn't stop him here now, the very meaning of justice would crumble. But to stop him, I'd have to risk everything, even my own name. Power versus justice. When arrogance meets the law. The silence after the video ended was heavier than any gavel I'd ever struck. Cameras clicked, pins froze midair, and even the lights seemed to hum louder. The man on trial, Chief Daniel Crawford, sat there calm, almost amused. He didn't blink. He didn't flinch, like he'd seen this movie before, and thought he'd already won. But he didn't know. This wasn't a movie. This was justice, and justice was real. I looked straight at him. Chief Crawford, do you still insist this was a misunderstanding? He leaned back in his chair. Judge, I've been doing this job for 25 years. I've seen men like you come and go. You make noise, then disappear. The crowd gasped. Even his lawyer looked stunned. You could see him thinking, did he really just say that to a judge? It wasn't arrogance anymore. It was open defiance. He wasn't just defending himself. He was challenging the court itself. His smirk widened as he said, Your Honor, let's not pretend the law is perfect. It bends for people like us, people who matter. That one line lit a fire inside me, because I knew who he meant by us. He wasn't talking about lawmen. He was talking about the powerful, the connected, the untouchable. But the law he mocked was about to answer back. Chief, I said slowly, the badge you wear doesn't place you above the law. It binds you to it tighter than anyone else. He laughed, that same sharp, arrogant laugh. Come on, Judge. Don't act holy. We both know this game. People respect influence, not principles. He leaned forward, voice dropping low so only I could hear. I know about your son, Judge. Michael Caprio, right? Nice firm he's got. Shame if someone started asking questions about how he got those city contracts. The words hit like a gunshot. For a second, the entire courtroom faded away. He wasn't just corrupt. He was threatening my family. That was the moment this became personal. I removed my glasses slowly. Are you threatening this court, Chief? He smiled. I don't make threats. I make predictions. Reporters leaned forward, sensing the story of a lifetime. Cameras zoomed in. You could hear the clicking grow faster. Let me be clear, I said, voice steady but burning with restrained anger. You will not bring my family into your corruption. He smirked again. I already have. For the first time in 42 years, I felt pure rage behind the robe. Elena, the prosecutor, stood. Your Honor, I request immediate contempt consideration. Crawford interrupted. raising his voice. Oh, please, spare me the theatrics. This whole court's a performance. You, me, the cameras, everyone's pretending justice still means something. His voice echoed through the courtroom. And that's when it happened. One of the troopers in the back stood up. You don't speak for us, Chief, he said firmly. You could feel the crowd gasp. The tide was turning. The blue wall was cracking. Crawford turned, eyes blazing. Sit down, officer. That's an order. The trooper shook his head. You don't give orders here anymore. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Reporters were scribbling faster than ever. I raised my gavel. Order in the court. The pounding echoed like thunder. Chief Crawford, your words and behavior are unbecoming of any officer of the law. He smirked. I'm the law. And that one line sealed his fate. I stood up slowly. No, Chief, you're not. The law doesn't belong to men like you. It belongs to the people you swore to protect. The crowd applauded softly, unable to hold it in. Even his lawyer buried his face in his hands. But Crawford wasn't done. He stepped closer, without permission, until he was nearly at my bench. His voice lowered, venom dripping from every word. Judge Caprio, let me tell you how this really works. You embarrass me here, and I make calls. The mayor, the governor, even the press, they all owe me favors. You won't last a week. It wasn't a courtroom anymore. It was a battlefield. I held his stare. You just added another charge to your list. Intimidation of a judge. He laughed again, louder this time. You think that scares me? I've buried cases bigger than this. You'll be yesterday's news before the ink dries. The gallery murmured louder. Even his own supporters began shifting, uneasy, because for the first time, they saw who he truly was. When arrogance burns too bright, it reveals the truth. Elena motioned to the bailiff. Your Honor, I request custody for contempt. But I held up a hand. Not yet, because something in his tone, something told me there was more buried beneath his threats. Chief, I asked quietly, when you say you've buried cases, what exactly do you mean? He hesitated. A flicker of something crossed his face. Panic, maybe. Then it was gone. You wouldn't understand, he said. There are deals that keep this state running. Real power doesn't show up in court. It signs checks. And just like that, he confessed without realizing it. Elena's eyes widened. Your Honor, that statement alone implies. I stopped her. I know. Crawford looked around, suddenly realizing the crowd wasn't cheering anymore. They were disgusted. Whispers of disgrace and corrupt filled the air. For the first time, his smirk faded. His eyes darted toward the cameras. Now his enemies, not his armor. The empire he built on fear was starting to crumble. I leaned forward, voice steady and calm. Chief Crawford, you said laws don't apply to you. You said you decide when and how they matter. You said power is above justice. Well, let's see how that theory holds up under oath. The bailiff stepped closer. Crawford adjusted his tie, his arrogance cracking. I have friends in high places, he muttered. Good, I said. They can watch what happens next. Because the man who thought he ran the law was about to face it. The day the gavel struck back, the air was electric, the kind of silence that hums before thunder. Chief Crawford's words still echoed. I have friends in high places. But for the first time, that confidence sounded hollow. He shifted in his seat, tugging at his collar like the weight of his own arrogance was finally catching up. But what happened next, no one in that courtroom would ever forget. I leaned forward. Chief Crawford, I'm giving you one last opportunity. Do you wish to withdraw your statement or stand by it under oath? He chuckled, defiant to the core. Judge, I don't withdraw statements. I make them. That arrogance, that unshakable belief that power could protect him, it was collapsing in slow motion. Elena, the prosecutor, spoke softly but firmly. Your Honor, the state moves for immediate judgment. We believe continued proceedings will only embolden his threats. Crawford snapped his head toward her. You keep quiet, young lady. You have no idea who you're talking to. Elena didn't even blink. I know exactly who I'm talking to. A man who's forgotten what justice means. And that's when the last mask came off. Crawford stood suddenly, slamming his palm on the defense table. You think you can lecture me about justice? I've been protecting this state for decades. You people sit in offices while I deal with real criminals. He turned toward me, voice rising, spitting fury. I've dined with governors, funded campaigns, buried stories. You think I'm scared of Courtroom? This place exists because of people like me. I rose slowly, the wood of the bench creaking under my hand. Chief Crawford, sit down. He didn't, and that's when the temperature in the room dropped to 0. He took a step forward. No, Judge, you're going to listen to me for once. You've been sitting there for 40 years pretending to be a hero, but you're just another old man hiding behind robe. The audience gasped. Even his lawyer whispered, Chief, please. But he shoved him aside like he was swatting a fly. You think the people respect you? They laugh at you. You let criminals walk free while you destroy careers like mine over nothing. He pointed directly at me. You're the reason this country's soft. And then he crossed a line no one ever should. He leaned forward, his voice lowering into a hiss. You think your family's safe behind that bench? You think your son's career will survive this? I can make one phone call, Judge, and everything you love will burn. The courtroom gasped in horror. Even his own supporters fell silent. Every eye turned toward me, waiting to see what I'd do. I removed my glasses, folded them carefully, and looked him straight in the eyes. Chief Crawford, I said quietly, you've just made the biggest mistake of your life. And in that instant, years of patience turned into pure justice. He laughed, loud, manic. Oh, please. What are you going to do? Give me a fine? Some community service? I nodded at the bailiff. Officer, take Chief Crawford into custody for contempt of court. The room froze. Crawford blinked. What? You heard me, I said calmly. You are now in contempt of court. The bailiff stepped forward, but Crawford snapped. You can't do that. Do you know who I am? I'm the chief of police. 2 state troopers rose from the back. One said quietly, not anymore. And with that, the unthinkable happened. The law finally stood up to power. As the troopers approached, Crawford exploded. You'll regret this. All of you. I run Westbrook. I run this entire state. His face turned crimson, veins pulsing at his temple. He tried to push past the bailiff, but the troopers were faster. They restrained him firmly. Get your hands off me. That's an order, he screamed. One of the troopers replied quietly, We don't take orders from corruption, sir. The crowd burst into murmurs, disbelief, shock, then applause. For the first time, people weren't afraid to cheer for justice. It wasn't just a courtroom anymore. It was a turning point. I looked down at him one last time. You said the laws don't apply to you, Chief. Well, now you're about to learn exactly how wrong you were. He spat the words through clenched teeth. You're finished, old man. I banged the gavel once, hard enough to shake the desk. This court is not afraid of bullies. Take him away. The troopers escorted him out, still shouting threats. The door slammed shut behind him like the end of an era. But even as the echoes faded, the real battle was just beginning. I exhaled slowly. 42 years of serving justice. And yet, this one case felt different. Because this wasn't just about one man's crimes. It was about how much corruption had infected the system he represented. During recess, I contacted the Attorney General, State Police Internal Affairs, and the FBI. Every agency agreed. The investigation into Crawford's conduct would begin immediately. I handed over every transcript, every record, every statement. And what they discovered next would shake the entire state. When court resumed, the mayor's office called him live. Your Honor, the clerk announced, the mayor of Westbrook has just issued a statement. The courtroom held its breath. Effective immediately, Chief Daniel Crawford has been terminated from his position. The crowd erupted in applause. Reporters ran out to call their editors. The same people who had once feared his name now cheered at his downfall. But the story didn't end with his arrest. It was only beginning. Because as the files started coming in, so did the truth. There were reports of missing evidence, destroyed cases, and secret meetings with officials. The man who once swore to protect justice had spent years burying it. And yet, in that moment, I didn't feel triumph. I felt sorrow. Because corruption doesn't start with evil. It starts with entitlement. And entitlement, left unchecked, becomes a disease. But justice, real justice, was finally taking its cure. I adjourned court with the words that would echo for years. Let this be a reminder to every officer, every leader, and every citizen: no badge, no title, no power is above the law. The gavel came down with a single, deafening strike, and for the first time in a long time, the courtroom felt pure again. But in the quiet that followed, none of us knew the aftermath would be even more shocking. The verdict that shook the nation. The next morning, the courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters whispered. Citizens filled every seat. Outside, people gathered on the courthouse steps, holding signs that read, "No one above the law." But inside, you could feel it, the weight of justice, the moment the world had been waiting for. Because today, the gavel would fall harder than ever before. The bailiff called the case. State of Rhode Island versus former Chief Daniel Crawford. That word, former, sent a wave through the room. His badge was gone, his rank erased, and yet the arrogance still flickered behind his tired eyes. He stood in handcuffs, flanked by troopers. His lawyer, pale and defeated, whispered frantically, but Crawford ignored him. He still believed he could talk his way out, but this time, words couldn't save him. I looked out at the crowd, officers, families, victims, and ordinary citizens who'd come to witness this moment. This wasn't just one man's sentencing. It was a message to everyone who'd ever believed they were untouchable. "Mr. Crawford," I began, my voice firm, clear. "You once wore the badge that symbolizes service, honor, and humility. But you turned it into a weapon against the very people you swore to protect." He lifted his chin, but his eyes flickered. "Your actions weren't mistakes," I continued. "They were choices, deliberate, selfish, and dangerous. And today, those choices would finally cost him everything." The prosecutor stepped forward. "Your Honor, the state requests maximum sentencing. The evidence shows repeated abuse of authority, obstruction of justice, and violent assault." I nodded slowly. "So noted." Crawford interrupted. "Your Honor, before you hand down your judgment, I just want to say," I raised my hand, "you've said enough." He froze. "You had every opportunity to show remorse, Chief. Instead, you showed contempt for this court, for your fellow officers, and for the law itself." The audience leaned in, waiting for the hammer to fall. "On the charge of reckless driving at 95 miles per hour, guilty. You endangered every life on that highway. You will pay the maximum fine, $1,000. Murmurs filled the room. "On resisting arrest, guilty. 90 days suspended, pending mandatory anger management and ethics retraining." He exhaled sharply, still thinking this would end lightly. But then I continued. "On assaulting a law enforcement officer, guilty. 3 years in state prison." His smirk vanished. You could almost hear his pulse drop, but it wasn't over. Not even close. "And finally," I said, "on the charge of criminal contempt for threatening a sitting judge, this court, and my family, guilty. An additional 2 years to be served consecutively." Gasps echoed. Reporters jumped to their feet. Even the troopers exchanged glances. That meant 5 years behind bars. No parole for at least 3. But I wasn't finished. Furthermore, this court is ordering a full federal investigation into every file, every case, every accusation under your leadership. If your corruption runs deeper, and I believe it does, justice will find it. The crowd erupted. Justice wasn't just served, it was unleashed. His lawyer stammered, "Your Honor, perhaps a plea agreement." I shook my head. "The time for deals is over. The time for truth has arrived." Crawford glared up, face red with fury. "You think this changes anything? You think you've won?" I leaned forward. "I didn't win anything, Chief. The people did. Because in that courtroom, justice didn't whisper, it roared." The gavel struck once, sharp, final, echoing through every wall. "This court imposes the maximum penalty." Case closed. The gallery erupted into applause, slow at first, then thunderous. Officers stood. Citizens wept. Even some reporters clapped through tears. Because for once, the system had worked, and in that sound, that applause, you could feel something healing. Trooper Michael Stevens, the man Crawford had assaulted, stepped forward after the session. Your Honor, he said quietly, thank you. When this happened, I thought reporting it would end my career. Everyone told me to drop it. But you showed us. The badge still means something. I nodded. No, Trooper. You show that. Outside, cameras flashed. The headline hit every screen within minutes. Judge Caprio delivers maximum penalty. Corrupt police chief brought to justice. But what came after that headline, no one was ready for. 3 days later, the new acting police chief, Maria Rodriguez, came to see me. Judge, she said, we've begun reviewing every case Crawford ever touched. We found missing evidence, destroyed reports, and officers who were threatened into silence. Her voice trembled. But we're cleaning house. Body cams on every officer. Civilian review board. New accountability programs. I smiled softly. That's how justice repairs itself. One honest act at a time. Justice didn't just punish, it rebuilt. 2 weeks later, the FBI confirmed what we all suspected. Crawford had been keeping secret files on judges, prosecutors, and officials, using them to blackmail his way through the system. He now faced 20 additional federal charges: conspiracy, bribery, obstruction, and illegal surveillance. His total sentence? 18 years in prison. No parole for 12. The same man who once said laws don't apply to me would now live every day under them. The story that began with arrogance ended with accountability. As reporters called it, the verdict that restored faith in justice. I thought of one letter that arrived weeks later. It was from Jennifer Martinez, the single mother from that same courtroom morning. She wrote, Dear Judge Caprio, when I saw Chief Crawford arrested, I realized something. Maybe the system isn't broken after all. Maybe it just needs people brave enough to fix it. Her words hit harder than any gavel. Because in that moment, I knew this story wasn't about punishment. It was about hope. And in that hope, justice found its greatest victory. When justice restores faith. Days passed after the gavel fell, but the echoes of that courtroom remained, long after the cameras turned off and the crowd dispersed. I walked through the empty chambers, sunlight spilling across the polished wood floors. The weight of what had happened wasn't just legal, it was moral. It reminded me why I had taken the oath all those years ago. Justice isn't about who wears the badge, it's about who honors it. Because sometimes, the quiet after the storm is louder than the chaos itself. Trooper Stevens stopped by my chambers. I never thought I'd see the day when someone like him was held accountable, he said quietly, eyes glistening. You reminded all of us that the law protects everyone, even those who thought they were untouchable. I nodded. It's not me, Michael. It's the system when people refuse to let fear rule. Across the state, emails poured in. Citizens, officers, and even former skeptics sent letters. I didn't believe in justice until I saw Judge Caprio stand up to Crawford. And then, one morning, I received a letter from Crawford himself. Written in cramped, trembling handwriting, the words were raw. Judge Caprio, I believe power protected me. I believed no one could touch me. I was wrong. Every day in that cell, I see the truth. Laws apply to all. Justice is real. Thank you for showing me what I refused to see. Even the man who mocked the law had to face its truth. But the story wasn't just about punishment. It was about hope. Because real justice isn't only about locking up criminals. It's about rebuilding trust in officers and citizens, in the very idea that morality and accountability matter. Outside the courthouse, new leadership emerged. Maria Rodriguez, the acting police chief, implemented reforms. Full transparency, civilian review boards, ethics retraining, and mandatory reporting. Corruption still existed in the world, yes, but it could no longer hide in the shadows. And sometimes, a single act of courage can ignite an entire system. I sat back in my chambers, reflecting on the lessons of this case. Honesty matters more than power. Loyalty is not blind obedience. Respect is earned, never demanded. Family, integrity, and accountability must always come first. Jennifer Martinez's letter reminded me, too. Maybe the system isn't broken. Maybe it just needed someone brave enough to fix it. And she was right, because justice isn't about one man. It's about everyone willing to stand for it. Weeks later, as I walked past the press outside, I overheard someone say, Judge Caprio didn't just sentence a corrupt officer, he restored faith in the law. That, more than anything, was the real victory. Even now, I think about the thousands who watched this case unfold, online and on television. They saw arrogance humbled, power challenged, and accountability served. They saw real courtroom justice, raw, emotional, and undeniable. And that is why this story isn't just a viral headline. It's a lesson the world needs. So to everyone watching, remember this. No matter how big, powerful, or untouchable someone seems, the law applies to all. Integrity cannot be bought. Courage is contagious. And when people like you watch, share, and speak up, justice doesn't just survive. It thrives. If this story inspired you, share it with your friends, family, and everyone who believes in real courtroom justice. Comment below, Justice Restored, if you believe no one is above the law. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon to never miss another viral true justice story, full of emotional courtroom moments, shocking confessions, and lessons that change lives. Because stories like these aren't just watched, they're remembered, shared, and celebrated. And your support ensures the world sees that truth, courage, and accountability always win. Remember, justice isn't just a word. It's a choice, and together, we can choose it every day.